Hey, it's Jay. I know I'm a very easy sell for 70s television. I can sit through a lot of boring nonsense because I know there's going to be some tangled story or interesting joke or just a very aesthetic moment that I'll like, so I come away liking 70s stuff more than the average person. However, there is some stuff that I think is very clearly bad. The writing is off, the characterizations are awful, the jokes are mean, and our hero is actually just a real jerk. Kolchak. That man is Carl Kolchak. I tried watching this show before and it left a bad taste in my mouth, so I abandoned it. But then I decided that since I'm watching 70s detective shows with one season, I should watch one that I know I'm not going to like, because negativity drives engagement. I'm perfectly fine being negative about this show. Carl Kolchak is the protagonist of 2 TV movies and 1 dreadful season of television in which the same thing happens pretty much every time. Carl starts with a spooky monologue, a bunch of people die from some kind of monster, Carl looks into the murders instead of doing his actual job, Carl and the authorities yell at each other because everyone is an asshole, Carl implausibly figures out what the monster is and then breaks into its lair, bumbling around until the monster shows up, and then Carl somehow kills it in a way that destroys all evidence of its existence so he can't tell the story. You might recognize this structure with some tweaks as just Monster of the Week, a concept that has been so ever-present in the past decades of TV as to become rote. This is probably the first one, and it's said to be a major influence on the X-Files, so it's an historically important show. It's unfortunate the protagonist is a real piece of shit. We meet Carl Kolchak in The Night Stalker, a pretty good TV movie. I'll admit it, it's pretty solid. The concept of the film is, what if vampires were real? How would the police respond to a feeding spree? And what if the insane conspiracy theorist was right? And also foolhardy and abrasive and just really obnoxious. Our narrator is Kolchak himself, a reporter, who has given the tape of the true story of what happened in Las Vegas between May 16th and May 28th of that year. There were several murders, mostly beautiful women who were walking alone at night, and the police did a lot of work to cover it up, claiming it was some guy hopped up on weed, or maybe even the hard stuff.
But I'll tell you this, he's out there, and I bet he's high on pot or the hard stuff, and he's going to kill again unless he's stopped.
That's what's leading to him to exsanguinating people every night. Kolchak was on the ground, though, and he's pretty sure the killer is a vampire, based on the fact that this guy seems to be pretty much invincible. The story starts slow, keeping things in the dark for a while and having Kolchak learn more and more facts that lead him to believe this is definitely a vampire. Puncture wounds, missing blood, the killer bought a car and taped up the windows like he's Spike, and of course this kind of behavior. Not sure how Kolchak always seems to be around when this is happening. The fact that he's just there taking pictures makes him look like a real asshole. Help somebody, man! Speaking of, Kolchak is in fact a real asshole. He's mean to other journalists, he's constantly arguing with his managing editor, Vincenzo, he's been fired several times and keeps jumping from paper to paper, he needs to sneak around City Hall because the district attorney just hates his guts, he's extremely smug whenever he talks.
The only way you're going to get him is if you proceed under the assumption that he's a real live vampire. Now.
Just the most obnoxious dude. So Kolchak gets a tip about where the vampire is hiding out, so he breaks into the house and looks around, takes pictures of all his vampire stuff, and finding a woman the vampire has kidnapped. He tries to free her, but the vampire is back and walks into the room and finds him hiding in the closet, so he holds a cross at him and just backs out of the room. Guess you're fucked, lady. Kolchak's getting out of here. The vampire follows and jumps Kolchak when he trips, and is just about to munch his face off when some guy just runs into the room and pulls the vampire off. Kolchak shoots the vampire in the chest several times, to no effect, so he pulls down the curtain and lets the light in, pacifying the vampire. Then Kolchak takes out the stake and hammer he brought for this occasion and stakes the vampire through the chest, murdering him. This guy just lets him do it, doesn't say shit, and then the sheriff comes in with his goons. We cut back to Kolchak typing away at his typewriter, as he's about to make a huge name for himself with a story about how he ignored police orders and almost got his ass killed by a vampire. He just needs to check in at City Hall, and then he and this girl, who's been in the movie and I've not mentioned because she's too good for him, are going to get married. He walks in all happy-go-lucky, and then realizes that all the powerful men in the city are here. They are going to be indicting him for murder because, yes, he openly talked about how the cops should be prepared to stake a bitch, and then is found driving a stake into a man's heart, having foregone any due process because he believed the unbelievable. Sure, he was right. This guy is a vampire, but you just can't do this, man. You are not Van Helsing. This is not your job. You are not prepared for this. Not to mention your inability to negotiate and explain your point, something would think a journalist would be good at. Nobody trusts you because you are untrustworthy. You seem like a real kook. So yeah, they're totally going to nail all the collateral damage of this event all on Kolchak, unless he agrees to leave town and never come back. We've packed your bags for you. Your girlfriend has already bailed on you. Get the fuck out. They are covering this up and forgetting all about it. That's why there's no way to collaborate Kolchak's story. It will be summarily denied. So it goes, being the speaker of truth. The movie is pretty good, actually. It moves, the personalities are big, and it's enjoyable watching them bang against each other. And as the protagonist of this kind of movie, Carl Kolchak works. His trash-ass personality means there's a bit of an unreliable narrator here, and you don't feel bad when bad things happen to him. It's funny to me that he got kicked out of Las Vegas. I would probably feel a bit differently if he was, say, the protagonist of an entire TV show. The Night Stalker was a smash success, which means that they made another TV movie, with Kolchak settling down in Seattle, where he is still telling anyone who will listen about that time he fought a vampire.
Look at that. Blood drained from a victim's There's nothing wrong with me.
He runs into Vincenzo, who was fired from his last job because of Kolchak, and he agrees to give him a job as long as he keeps it under control. Kolchak does not keep it under control because something is killing the young women of Seattle, and Kolchak wants to get to the bottom of this, mainly because it gives him an excuse to hang out with this hot babe who is trying to get justice for her murdered friend. This movie is fine, it's just the same movie again. Women keep getting murdered, only Kolchak can see it. He is too much of a belligerent jerk to work with the police. He somehow finds the monster's lair and kills the monster before the authorities can do anything. It is amazing how they thought they could just make the same movie again. There are some changes, obviously, as we focus more on the mystery of just what exactly is happening, which is a man who's discovered an alchemical formula that lets him live forever, but only if he kills 7 young women every 21 years to use their blood in his potions. It makes him super strong and impervious, but the side effects are a bitch, turning him into a horrifying corpse monster while he's performing the complicated ritual. Or something. It doesn't make a ton of sense. The alchemist's whole deal is really confused. Somehow he's done this several times before, and there were bursts of serial killings over the decades without anyone noticing at all, especially since this man was a well-known and respected doctor. His ability to keep up the trade has led him to faking his own death and hiding away in this section of the Seattle Underground, where he set his mummified family around the dinner table so they can stay with him forever. I think you've been alive too long, buddy. Someone needs to check in on Grandpa's man cave. He's doing weird stuff in there. Despite having been able to get all the blood he needs, he gets distracted by finding Kolchak in his lair and just tells him about his entire deal, takes Kolchak on a tour. He'll get Kolchak set up with a nice bed, but first he needs to take the last dose of the potion that allows him to live forever. He just needs a moment. Kolchak chucks something at him, which makes the alchemist quite mad, but it's all of 5 minutes before he crumbles into dust. That last dose seemed really important. Maybe you shouldn't have brought Kolchak directly into this room. Welp, too late now. This movie has way more of Kolchak being an ass or a creep. There's this ridiculous woman who also works at the newspaper that he cannot stop being a misogynist pig around. He is constantly getting into yelling matches with Vincenzo for no reason. He spends way too long hanging around this college student. I do not like the relationship. Love her outfits though, she has a great fit. And the movie ends with him leaving town again, this time with Vincenzo and the college student. He's threatening to take his stupid ass to New York, see what kind of supernatural bullshit he can get up to there. It's more, but worse. The personality really starts to grate on you, and the monster is kinda stupid. I do like this one character, Mr. Barry, the archivist, who's played by Mr. Peepers, who's also the voice of Underdog. And Marlon Brando's childhood friend and love of his life? Anyway, I like Mr. Barry. He's a weird little guy.
Thanks.
Most welcome. I envy you.
You do?
Research. That's where the joy lies.
There were plans for a third movie, set in Hawaii involving UFOs and androids, but they instead decided to expand it into a series which was pretty awful, actually. Kolchak now works with Vincenzo at the INS, the independent news service, in Chicago, and spends every episode not doing his job and just being an irritating dick to everyone while he tracks down some monster who is terrorizing some community or other. Eventually, the victims stop being exclusively young, hot women, but his methodology doesn't really change. Kolchak will happen to be around when some supernatural shit goes down. He'll track down the people who know what this thing is. He'll try to tell somebody and they will ignore him. Then he will take it upon himself to destroy the threat, and will do so in the most bumblefuck way that somehow avoids any real consequences for him. There are some occurring characters beside Kolchak and the poor put-upon Vincenzo, but Kolchak works alone, mainly because most people wouldn't work with him. Instead, we occasionally see the other employees of INS, who are all too nice to him. There's Ron Updike, who works on the society desk. He seems to be just a regular guy, a bit fastidious, but Kolchak is so mean to him. He calls him uptight, he parks in Updike's designated spot, and after politely asking Carl not to do that, he calls a tow service on Carl, but Carl switched the sign, so Updike's car is towed instead. One time he calls into the office and tricks Ron into waiting on the phone for an invitation to a private dinner, just real antagonizing behavior for no other reason than he just dislikes Ron personally. And Updike is very caring to him when he stumbles into the office after a monster attack. Why are you such an ass? There's Miss Emily, who writes the syndicated advice column and also creates the crosswords sometimes, I guess. She's very nice, a kind old lady who treats everyone with respect, even Carl, and may be the one person who Kolchak trusts. Still doesn't mean he would not shoot her in the stomach if he needed to, but I'll explain that later. A minor character I don't want to talk about is Monique Marmelstein, an aggressively awful, useless woman stereotype who charges directly into gunfights and acts like she knows how to do everything, who Kolchak can't stand because he hates women, and when she gets in the way for the third time, he shoves her into a taxi and tells the driver to take her back to New York, which is 800 miles away. If I was a taxi driver, I would not take this fare, especially since this doesn't seem to be Monique's idea. But we get a call from her uncle, the publisher, who is actually overjoyed that Monique has been trafficked over state lines for an exorbitant cost. She is luckily not in many episodes. A minor character I do like is the coroner that Kolchak has in his pocket, played by Piglet.
But I couldn't comment on that. Why, I'd get in big trouble. Well, I wouldn't make a peep about that, not even for 20 bills. There's a wall around them. I've been iced out of it, but...
He's a funny little character actor. Love to see him in these early roles. He's got a real pedigree. He started as one of the Angry Men, and then put in the work until his death in 2005. Love hearing his ridiculous voice.
I'm telling you for the last time, there are no special favors for anyone. You get it with the rest of the reporters.
The one thing Kolchak has is an interesting set of monsters. They had to write 20 versions of the exact same idea, and they couldn't just do vampires every time, so they got creative. Possibly a little too creative, taking liberally from folklore from many cultures that they should not have borrowed from. I am assuming that all the depictions are inaccurate, pulling only from sources available in the 70s, and those sources saw it through a white colonial lens, so there's likely insensitive shit. I'm going to charge through that stuff with a list of all the monsters Kolchak murdered, from worst to best, starting with... The worst monster is character actor Richard Kiel in Breadface. Pretty bad, pretty shitty. He plays a Native American trickster creature that just obsessively steals jewelry like some kind of racially insensitive magpie, and Kolchak climbs up 35 flights of stairs to where the Diabolero is just chilling, and after they dance around each other, Kolchak shows the thing a mirror, and he crumbles in the dust within moments. Seems like if the Diablolero's weakness is mirrors, he would have been dead a long time ago. I imagine there's a lot of mirrors in Chicago. Just awful. Sucks that Richard Kiel is doing this. Mache Menudo is a Native American bear god who is upset that this hospital is being built on his sacred land, and so it just starts wantonly killing people and screwing things up. This is all made up. They got the name Mache Menudo from a book about the Native American population written in 1853 as the evil spirit god of the tribe who resided in the Chicago area at the time. And that same book says that this evil spirit, this Mache Manito, is a snake god, so that's all you need to know about this episode. Kolchak doesn't even defeat it. The hospital literally just gives up. All he manages to do is give himself a ton of radiation poisoning when he should have just left well enough alone. Stupid ass episode. Damn, 3 times we come to this indigenous American well. This time it's the Aztecs, who were just running around Chicago dressed like this, and have taken over this hotel, causing some workplace friction by giving this young idiot a cush life in exchange for voluntarily being final sacrifice for their undead and undying leader to complete his live forever ritual. Kolchak gets involved and screws the whole thing up by persuading the idiot that it ain't worth it, which gets Kolchak almost murdered by a mummy, but the mummy unfortunately can't finish the job. Another episode, another cultural appropriation. This time it seems accurate based on Wikipedia, but they implement the shape-changing ability in a fairly stupid way. People in the Jewish district of town are seeing trusted individuals in unusual places, who they scream at with a lot of pointless questions while the person stalks towards them, quietly, without saying a word. Some kind of mesmerism must be happening. This guy finds his rabbi in a meat factory. This is clearly a boogans. Run, dummy! Kolchak gets pulled onto the case by Phil Silvers, whose character dies because he trusted Kolchak. Kolchak is indirectly responsible for this man's death. Okay, maybe Phil should have realized that Carl is yelling at him from the other side of the swastika fence and something was off, but I want to blame Carl anyway. Kolchak finds this Indian man dying in this room and is given a magic crossbow to kill the Rakshasa because he is the only guy around. Apparently nobody knew or cared this guy was in here, so it falls to this moron to outwit a supernatural being. Then Carl runs into Miss Emily out here in this dark alley, and she even tells him why she's here. She wants some experience for the mystery novel she's working on that Kolchak couldn't be bothered to read. But Kolchak trusts his gut and shoots him in the stomach. And it was indeed the Rakshasa. Glad Carl didn't have to wait very long to complete the holy quest he was just given. Carl, of course, can't tell Miss Emily about this supposed weakness he has, but hey, at least Miss Emily is getting laid tonight. It's Hollywood voodoo, there's a gang war between the Syndicate and the Black Numbers operations, and one side is using zombies. It sounds more awesome than it is. Carl is a moron and gets his ass dragged to the graveyard by these criminals to prove his zombie theory, and gets left in an open grave overnight after a zombie attack. Then he gets himself cursed by a voodoo lady and has to kill the zombie with dust or something, so it doesn't come and kill him. Maybe avoid stories about organized crime, Kolchak. You don't seem to be savvy enough to handle it. Feels like you got lucky. There's a succubus on campus who's taking over the bodies of babes and seducing men before murdering them by showing them her corpse face. It is for some reason tied to this ancient tablet in this guy's office, and in order to save this nerd from getting pet to death, he just wrecks the shit out of it against the man's own wishes. He meets a college journalist here who feels like she might become his sidekick for this adventure, but he instantly sours a relationship so much that she's unwilling to work with him later. Maybe if he wasn't such a prick, you know? We don't even get to see these aliens. They are creatures beyond our understanding, wrecking our shit and making an entire stack of iron disappear in front of a crowd of cops who all decide they saw nothing. They are killing random animals, and also anyone who stumbles into their view. This electronic salesman, this guy who knows Mathematico, the universal language.
The author of Mathematico, a universal language that Leon has refined for use in unconventional communication.
Anyway, Kolchak gets near the UFO and passes out, and then the aliens leave. Another mystery unsolved. The first episode has the exact same plot as the Night Strangler. Some guy is ritually murdering women, but this time it's because he's Jack the Ripper, and he's gotta do it. He's just gotta. It's what Jack the Ripper does. I will not excuse the episode for the last 15 minutes, which is just Kolchak very slowly wandering around a house in the dark. It's ridiculous. Kolchak does get in trouble for trying to solicit a woman at the massage parlor, and has to defend his manliness, because of course he does. What a boob. The people at this building have it dug too deep, and awakened a man in a dinosaur suit who wants to make sure nobody disturbs its eggs. Kolchak spends the entire time sneaking into this building and getting caught and ejected, only so he could sneak back inside a box like he's Wile E. Coyote. But at least Tom Bosley is here. Anyway, Kolchak fails to kill the dinosaur. The story just ends. A dabbler of the dark arts, Madeline is a hot young witch who wants to make her way in the fashion world, if it wasn't for that damn Madame Treevey, who is keeping her in check. Luckily, some dork wanders in to talk about that time she pushed a guy out a window with some mannequins tourist trap style. She gets all her friends together and puts on a wacky little coven meeting to trick him into breaking into Madame Treevey's office and breaking all her magic wards, allowing her to be incapacitated. Now only Kolchak stands in her way, and he's a moron. He's somehow gotten himself in trouble with the mob, who wants him to give back the thing, only he has no idea where it is. For some reason, Madeline bails him out with her clairvoyant powers, and after they agree to just be cool with each other, she decides to just kill him anyway. This guy's a little weasel. Unfortunately, he knows about mojo bags and can ward her off, and when she gets really close to killing him, he dunks her head into an open vat of blue dye. Seems like a real dick move. I know she's a witch trying to murder you, but that shit could be dangerous. So she chases him outside with a pair of scissors, and he leaps up on a car and starts accusing her of being a witch, which we were told earlier is capable of neutralizing witch's power and also drives the witch insane. Don't know why those would be the rules to magic. Seems like it would be real easy to be accused of being a witch. It happens a lot, actually. Anyway, she gets locked up forever in an insane asylum. Real misogynist episode, sucks. Justice for Madeline, actually. Sure, she did a couple murders, but she didn't deserve that. This is technically a sequel to the original Night Stalker, as a descendant of the original vampire suddenly wakes up in Los Angeles and starts attacking random people. Kolchak is there to do an interview with some new age guy, but misses his appointment and instead convinces the real estate agent to write the story for him while he takes care of this vampire business. It's largely stupid, but I do like that the vampire just does this all the time. Some oil company drilled too deep near some ice line and some kind of organism is born. Somehow. It's not super clear. And this is clearly just a gorilla suit. At least they tried something, I guess. Also, Kolchak tries to befriend the creature and gets shot and dies. No, wait. It seems it was a tranquilizer dart. He's fine. Boo. This is an interesting one. When this guy has a heart attack that creates a doppelganger, an angry ghost that wants to take over the life of this composer, so he just starts killing everyone close to him and driving him mad. Just being a huge creeper while the composer and Kolchak are hiding in this church from it. Kolchak finds out how to destroy it and goes to the pinball arcade to do a little exorcism, but the episode loses points for him getting this information from a Roma woman who really plays it up. Couldn't help themselves. Some guy decides to turn to the dark arts to advance his political career, and turns himself into a black dog to murder a bunch of his rivals. Kolchak sneaks into his lair and gets an offer for a deal with the devil, but when he doesn't respond enthusiastically enough, the politician just tries to murder him, but Kolchak destroys his magical medallion, so he's forever trapped as an evil dog. So is the folly of man. Some suit of armor is walking around murdering people like this is a Scooby-Doo episode. It's stupid as hell, but you gotta respect how sick this kinda is. We get to see Kolchak ruin his relationship with someone he respects in real time, as he comes across a decorated detective, a bit old and long-winded, but a reasonable chap, until Kolchak starts talking about suits of armor coming to life. What poppycock.
You are a man who has resorted to lies and chicanery to the point of being pathological. I believe that you suffer from autosuggestion and in an obsessive desire to win approval expressed through the need for a big story, you convince yourself that what you want to be true is true. In short, I believe your brain has turned to onion dip.
Anyway, Kolchak goes a bit nuts about this one, so much so that Vincenzo is very concerned about him. But then Kolchak goes to find the Black Knight and take pictures of him. This is not a way to get evidence, Kolchak. It will just look like you posed the pictures. But the Black Knight tries to murder him, and he's able to stop it, somehow. One of these times the monster is going to get him. Throw a big rock at him or something. Kolchak gets to go on Vincenzo's cruise vacation because the people with the books need to talk to Vincenzo over Christmas break. Someone is getting laid off. Probably the guy who never does his assignments and always tries to put stories about vampires or whatnot on the wire. But no, he gets a free vacation out of it instead. At least Vincenzo is safe from the werewolf on board, who kills 16 people in his rampage on this swingers cruise. Oh, yeah, did Vincenzo not mention that everyone is on this boat to fuck? Like Kolchak's roommate, who's trying to find him a nice girl the whole trip? Just a real cool, casual guy. He and his ex-wife do this every year. It's a great time. Kolchak is a huge judgmental prude about this, and instead spends the whole time bothering the shit out of the staff and getting yelled at by the captain.
Should any person or persons fail to comply with the captain's directives, he or they shall be placed under bodily restraint for as long as the captain sees fit.
Bodily restraint?
The werewolf is on a rampage, so Kolchak takes it upon himself to steal any silver on board to make some silver bullets, and manages to get a few shots in and somehow tosses the werewolf off the deck into the ocean below. Sure, man, you're a real hero. Anyway, I like the pathos of this monster, the man trying desperately to contain the beast, and also he looks ridiculous. This werewolf is wearing slacks. The government has built a robot man who wants nothing more to return to his mother figure and have a normal life. That's why he's killing people and creating some kind of creepy flesh mask to put over his faceplate. And this is just a guy wearing a big faceplate. It makes him look extra goofy. Kolchak isn't involved at all, really. He just happens to be there when the army comes to collect the robot man, who gets shot and dies. Very pathos. Really makes you think. Then the government doses him with some memory erasing drug and he forgets or misremembers the whole thing. What a waste of time. This is some Cajun legend, the Paramafe, the evil moss monster that people could control with their dreams. Also known as this guy taking a sleep study who uses it to murder the clumsy girl at the office and anyone else who personally wronged him. Whatever it is extremely silly, and therefore, great. Look at this walking carpet killing people. Kolchak is marked for death because he sucks, and so he needs to flee into the sewers and stab the carpet monster. Not sure why he came down here. It was going to come to you, Kolchak. A very pretty lady has started an exclusive dating club where she gathers the hottest young people she can find with promises of being one of the hot ones, when actually what she wants is to sacrifice them to the Greek gods so she can live forever. We are led to believe this is Helen of Troy, that's why she's so obsessed with this, but seems like a long time to run a grift like this. Probably not a ton of exclusive dating clubs during the Dark Ages. Kolchak defeats her by knocking all her statues over, which is bad and boring, but you gotta admit, this lady definitely has some charm. Kathy Lee Crosby, the original Wonder Woman and former professional tennis player. There was only one option for the best monster, and that's the Headless Motorcycle Swordsman. Just look at this guy. No! He's trying to collect his head, which has ended up in this warehouse because of biker politics. And so he's just swinging his sword at anyone that crosses his path. Every time you hear the motorcycle approaching, you are pumped, because you're going to get to see the Headless Motorcycle Swordsman and his too big body and his little neck nub on top. Yeah, everyone should run. This thing is a maniac. Kolchak kills it by finding its skull. Boo. Boo Kolchak. You would think a show that regularly features montages of our hero wandering around the dark, the tone will be a bit macabre, but it devolves into broad comedy a lot. You spend a lot of time watching character actors doing bits, and the music sounds like most 70s shows, you know, kinda hokey. The theme song is not good, just Kolchak whistling this off as time freezes around him. And of course the show wants you to do a lot of work with the monster kills. Whole bunch of them is just seeing someone in close proximity to a monster and them looking scared at the camera. It's cheap, it looks cheap, it's written cheaply, and there's just not a lot of effort put into anything. Plus, you gotta hang out with this asshole the whole time.
There is.
Miss
I'm
Vaughn.
sorry. If this is an interview, you're going to have to clear it with public relations.
You mean you can't even talk to the press? How about having a cup of coffee? Or do you have to clear that with the cafeteria?
I have a musical background. I play the French horn.
Yeah, well, I would have guessed that. Well, what can you expect from a city that erects a building to look like a stack of flapjacks, and where some of the men dust their eyebrows with glitter? He wanted me to help with the buttering up, and I promised I'd show up with a haircut, a new hat, and a press suit. But I lie a lot. When I was a cub reporter in the Windy City, there used to be a big book in the file room that listed phone numbers in numerical order and provided the addresses they corresponded to. In those days, it was great for finding girls whose numbers you might find, well, somewhere.
Hey guys, have I mentioned how much I do not like Carl Kolchak? I know, I won't stop ragging on him, but I'm almost done, I promise. I just need to discuss how he's an insanely immoral person who you should not trust in your home. He is going to poke through your shit. Keep an eye on him. He's squirrely, always ducking to places he doesn't belong and involving himself in everyone else's business. He is always bribing people when he isn't pretending to be the police or some other authority figure so he can chase that story. There's a reason everyone is irritated with this guy. He's the goddamn worst. He's a bad journalist too, trying to publish unsubstantiated claims all the time, writing exposés about people without sourcing it with them. His byline only actually appears a couple of times because everything he's tracking down is unprintable. I can see why he's been fired no more than 9 times that we know of. Dude, you are in your 50s. Get your shit together. Stop chasing monsters. You are so bad at this. Kolchak was rightfully canceled after a single season, and if not for the influence of the X-Files, we might have seen the last of Kolchak. But the producers of X-Files loved the show so much that the producer Frank Spotnitz created his own Kolchak, but translated the concept into a modern television show. Unfortunately, the modern time they chose to do this was 2005. Lost had already shown up and eaten X-Files' lunch, and television was dark again. Considering the source material, we get a lot of the worst instincts of the age, some confusing through lines, dull plots with predictable twists, a poorly baked will they won't they, and just silly editing decisions. This Carl Kolchak is younger and hotter. He's got himself a tragic backstory. A mysterious creature attacked him and his wife one day, killing her and leaving him with trauma and a federal agent who's convinced he's responsible. But he's more concerned about this weird mark on his arm, which he's had for his entire life, but he noticed suddenly appearing on his wife after she died. This mark is showing up on a lot of corpses, actually, and Kolchak is trying to figure out why. It's stupid and we don't get a lot of it, but also more than I expected. It's showing up as a small plot point in a couple of cases and being the central mystery of the 2-part episode, the secondary mystery being why there's a B story about a widow who runs a bodega in Little Korea who falls in love with the undercover DEI agent who is being hunted by a couple of invulnerable bikers. He dies at the end of the first episode, and she is shaken and decides to leave town, and appears once more when it's revealed she's sheltering the dead cop's pregnant wife from the evil bikers. What is this plot? This feels very Lost-coded, just saying. We never get a definitive answer to what Kolchak's deal was. They were saving that for a second season, and there was no chance of that happening. But it's pretty obvious that the mark is some kind of tag or symbol that designated Kolchak as an alien or some kind of other being. All his people have it. For most, the tag doesn't show up until after they die. And the invulnerable bikers are tasked with making sure that 2 aliens don't make a baby with each other. It would be too powerful, and that's why they go after pregnant women. I wouldn't place a bet on it, but this show wasn't super creative, so I'm probably right. With that flaccid attempt at meta story out of the way, how was the rest of it? Pretty bland. They have filed all the edge off of Carl Kolchak. For one, he actually does his job on the crime beat, although he is still a little scamp. Still making a lot of unethical decisions, but he's a much less obnoxious character. He is more the smoldering type. He has so much pain he's dealing with, you see. Vincenzo is also here, but I could not tell you anything about him. He is such a non-character, a perfectly reasonable managing editor of a local paper. We have some other characters, Perry Reed, a young black woman reporter who bristles at Kolchak because of his shitty attitude, but it soon becomes the usual romantic tension that we also get no movement on. But she's played by Gabrielle Union, and she's so pretty and competent in this. I like Perry. Then there's Jan, the photographer. He's fine. He's a bit easily impressed by Kolchak's bullshit, and has some real disposable character energy. They try to trick us into thinking he was murdered, but it was the Korean doctor who was in unrequited love with the bodega widow. Jan was under the table. He also is kind of dating this cool hacker lady who works in IT, but she's only in like 2 episodes, so I don't know much about her. Oh, and there's a morgue assistant we see a few times, who trades info for basketball tickets and hits on Perry, asking her out to the opera. Pretty good move. Doesn't work. The monsters are extremely lackluster. They pulled the supernatural elements way back to make this seem realistic, which just makes it uninteresting. There's a demon child who is trying to use his dark influence to get a new dad. There's this cult leader who can mind control people and almost makes Kolchak kill Perry. Both of them are killed just randomly at the end of the episode because they wrote themselves into a corner and couldn't think of a way to make the heroes matter. There's a goo man, a man who could turn people into mummies with his goo hand. He almost kills Kolchak but leaps into traffic instead. There's an immortal lady who seems to kill people to stay alive forever, and she's in some kind of incestuous relationship with her son, but he learns that she's a murderer, so he kills her. There's a haunted house that spooks people to death because some family annihilator asshole terrified his child to death and created some kind of curse. I think there's a bat monster in the pilot. It's never really clear. There is one episode that introduces a secret government chemical that will cause anyone who touches it to explode into blisters and then burst into flames, which the Terror Maker had used in a series of killings where he left a little wax figure coated with the chemical at the homes of scientists who created the compound so they would touch it and explode. He was assumed to have been killed years ago, but the figurines are popping up again. But Perry can't report on it because the Terror Maker beat is officially this old journalist. He called dibs on this story, and he sides with the FBI that it's a copycat killer. It is. It's the FBI agent who became withdrawn and obsessed about the case, leaving the figurines around. And Kolchak makes him touch one so he bursts into flames, and this is all very obvious and kind of boring. But can we go back to how this chemical is definitely real and definitely causes people to burst into flames and is just an accepted fact in this universe? Seems like this would be a bigger deal. Then there's the last episode where Kolchak gets kidnapped by some insane person who thinks Kolchak's giving him instruction through his stories and spends the whole time trying to talk him down. Maybe there's a gas leak in this house because he somehow sees Perry get shot and die, which leads him to throw the insane man into the creepy room down the hall where the old man is, a manifestation of his madness or maybe an actual demon, but in actuality he's just a serial killer of some kind. It's very, very implausible. Like, who is this guy? He has a social worker. We see him get killed. How did he fall off his meds this badly? It's creepy in a very unpleasant way. There are a couple of shining spots. Jane Lynch is in an episode, as is Stephen Tobolowsky, good old Tobo, who reprises the role of Mr. Barry, the guy who ran the archive from the Night Strangler.
Scurry about, gathering their contemporary bits of gossip. Research. That is where the joy lies, and the fascination.
This was a good reference. I liked this. Oh, also he has a pork pie hat in his murder boardroom in his apartment. Couldn't be bothered to put it on, but hey, look, another reference. Just the two, though. They didn't have the rights to the TV show, just the movies. So we didn't get to see their modern reboot of Miss Emily. Now it's time for the ultimate question. Do I still hate Kolchak? Can you actually hate watch something? Isn't devoting enough time and energy in producing a YouTube video that is not exactly algorithm friendly mean that I will inevitably find things to like about it, become charmed with some little idiosyncrasies, find one episode that kind of hits? And I'd love to curveball you, but man, Headless Motorcycle Swordsman, that is pretty fucking rad. Like, it's not a good episode of television, but it is entertaining. Any minute now, the big guy's gonna be back thrashing out the place. But the rest, it's not good. Repetitive, corny, cruel, insensitive, slow, cheap, irritating, nonsensical. I got a lot of negative adjectives I could throw at this thing. Do not watch. Do not be inspired by. Take notes from other, better Monster of the Week shows, because sometimes prototypes are unworkable, you know? I will still get some joy from watching Carl Kolchak get yelled at. That's what he's for, right? He's unlikable on purpose. You're supposed to think he's an ass. And that way, I guess, mission accomplished. I do hate Carl Kolchak, but it's cool. It's what he wanted. He's written well, I guess. Darren McGavin, the man playing him, is also cool with me. He was the dad in Christmas Story. He's alright. He's just got that kind of face, you know? At least became an actor about it. Okay, cool. That's enough of that. I'm going to need everyone to hold the spirit of Columbo in their hearts because it would be great if we were all dedicated to the truth and to holding wealthy assholes accountable. Please, stay safe.